A young mother mysteriously died just hours after dining in an upscale restaurant. The search for clues revealed secrets hidden in an attic, an upscale gentleman's club, and underneath the young woman's skin. Shortly after midnight, police in a wealthy Philadelphia suburb received a frantic 911 call.
I haven't much time. My wife, they're in the tub.
34-year-old Craig Rabinowitz said he had just found his wife Stephanie in the bathtub.
Something happened to her. Get up. She fell, and she's not breathing. She's blue.
When police arrived, they found Rabinowitz in the bathroom, holding his wife's head above the water. They performed CPR and rushed her to the hospital. Unfortunately, there was nothing doctors could do. When Craig learned of his wife's death, he collapsed in grief. Doctors had no explanation.
I asked the doctor, help me out here. What do you think happened? And he said he really didn't know. He told me sometimes people die for unexplained reasons. Could have been an aneurysm, a heart attack, whatever. But on first glance, there wasn't any sign of trauma.
Rabinowitz told police that he and his wife Stephanie had dinner at a Thai restaurant, came home, had a drink, then Stephanie took a bath while Craig said he watched television.
And while he was watching the hockey game, he heard a thump, which he attributed to a shampoo bottle falling on the floor in the bathroom. He didn't think much of it. He watched the hockey game for approximately 20, 30 minutes and realized, hey, his wife hasn't come back to the bedroom from the bath. So he went into the bathroom and found her unconscious in the bathtub.
Detective Charles Craig had investigated many unusual deaths before, and a spouse with something to hide would usually act suspiciously, but not Craig Rabinowitz.
Generally, when we interview people, witnesses, victims, suspects, we look to see if they have eye contact with us, see if they're shaking or if they're very nervous or if they're perspiring, and he didn't exhibit any of those signs.
And police found nothing suspicious or out of place in the couple's home after Stephanie's death.
TV was on, the shampoo bottle was in the bathroom, there was water in the bathtub. We checked all the doors and windows and found that the house was secure. We went through the master bedroom, didn't appear to have any signs of a struggle. We didn't find blood or anything of that nature.
Craig and Stephanie were a classic love story. They'd been together since they first met in summer camp as teenagers.
The Rabinowitzes were the perfect couple. In love, with good jobs. They had a beautiful young daughter, a year old. He had a business of his own, selling latex gloves and supplies. They'd been married since 1990. She was a lawyer, Bryn Mawr and Temple University educated.
Craig was proud of his wife and worked hard to put her through law school.
Stephanie spoke about her marriage in very idyllic terms. I mean, she thought she had a wonderful relationship, almost a perfect relationship in that, and she was extremely happy.
Between her law practice and his business, they were very affluent and lived in the exclusive mainline section of Philadelphia. But even wealth and privilege can't prevent unfortunate incidents like the one that befell Stephanie Rabinowitz.
I came to the office Wednesday morning. I walked in and everyone was crying, and I was shocked to hear that Stephanie had died Tuesday night. I heard that she had an accident, that she drowned in a bathtub. That's all we were told.
But why had Stephanie drowned? Was it caused by something she ate, medication, or was she depressed? Forensic investigators needed to find out more. The cause of Stephanie Rabinowitz's death was a mystery.
Stephanie Rabinowitz may have slipped, hit her head in the tub, subsequently drowned. It was a real tragedy. A mother of a one-year-old child, devoted husband, happy family life.
I mean, I was at a loss as to how she could have died. I didn't see any type of trauma, any cuts, any abrasions, any of that type of thing.
Stephanie came from a religious Jewish family. In accordance with her religion, Stephanie's parents and her husband Craig wanted to bury her before the next sundown.
It was a push to have Stephanie Rabinowitz buried quickly under Jewish custom.
But the coroner overruled the family's wishes, saying he wanted to perform a complete autopsy. His action was prompted in part by something Craig Rabinowitz told police. He said Stephanie was having trouble adjusting to the demands of caring for their new baby and her work as a lawyer, and she occasionally took a prescription sleep medication. In the meantime, a tipster called police suggesting they investigate Craig's involvement in a gentleman's club named Delilah's Den.
Delilah's Den is the upscale strip club in Philadelphia. It's a place where it's not uncommon to see a lot of professional athletes or entertainers or people who visit Philadelphia from out of town, business people, and just groups of guys out to have a beer for a bachelor party to show up at Delilah's Den.
When detectives visited the club, they discovered Craig was a regular customer and that his interest was primarily in only one dancer named Summer. Employees said this wasn't unusual.
Well, Summer didn't come dance at clubs to make friends. Like, she was definitely there to make money, and she was sort of known as something of a shark. Like, she was always a big money maker. She always went after the, customers that appeared to have the most money. You know, can either be entertaining on stage and make it real clear to the customers that we're gonna have a good time while you're here, but the fun ends at the door. Or you can sort of draw the customers into this, longer, drawn-out fantasy and develop regular customers.
When interviewed, Summer admitted that Craig was a good customer, but strictly that, a customer and not even her best one.
They would each have 2 or 3 good customers who would spend a lot of money on them, even buying them furnishings for their house or paying repair bills or doing dental work, that type of thing.
She said there was no sexual relationship between the two of them, that they weren't dating or anything of that nature. We were always suspicious of that, of course.
I know dancers who've gotten cars from their customers, other elaborate gifts of jewelry, and, apartments, etc.
Delilah's customers who want something a little cozier can get private dances in the champagne room. They use Delilah's dollars, house money bought with credit cards. Club records indicated Craig was spending as much as $3,000 a week at Delilah's. A lot of money, perhaps, but certainly not illegal.
In fact, Craig's visits to Delilah's were not unknown to Stephanie Rabinowitz. I think he had really told her that he did business there, and that is not an uncommon thing to see in any city with people who are doing business, especially something like sales.
Whether Craig's interest in Delilah's was professional or personal, it certainly didn't explain Stephanie's death. That would have to come from the forensic accountants. In the 12 months before his wife's death, Craig Rabinowitz spent almost $100,000 in Delilah's Den, an upscale gentleman's club in Philadelphia. Investigators searched the Rabinowitz's home for financial records, interested to know how Rabinowitz could afford this kind of spending.
He was a latex glove salesman.
Describing importing containers of these latex gloves from overseas, that the cost of a container would be $20,000 or $22,000 per container, that he was then going to be able to sell those containers for twice that amount. That was the pitch. Sounds too good to be true.
It was too good to be true. Zayas discovered that Craig's latex glove distribution company had never bought or sold a single glove. The only money coming into the company was funds from investors, Craig's family and friends whom he was scamming with a Ponzi or pyramid scheme.
So the money from investor 2 was now going back to pay investor 1 and just keeping that cycle running.
And Zayas learned that Craig paid no office or warehouse rent anywhere in Philadelphia. The closest thing Craig had to an office was his seat at Delilah's strip club.
When his family, when his wife, when his friends, when his in-laws thought he was out making sales calls for his latex glove business, at least 1, 2, 3 days a week, Craig Rabinowitz was in a dark, air-conditioned strip club in a back room, getting couch dances and lap dances by a 24-year-old stripper.
Zayas estimated Craig was in debt to the tune of $800,000. He owed most of it to his shareholders, who had invested in his non-existent business and who wanted their money back at some point with a profit. Apparently, not even Stephanie knew what was going on.
Of all the people that Craig conned, quite clearly, he conned Stephanie the most.
And the forensic accounting identified a possible motive for murder. On the inside of the handwritten ledger were amounts that corresponded to the life insurance policies on Stephanie, including $1.5 million worth which Craig had just purchased. The outside for a living. All of this showed motive, but if the medical examiner didn't rule Stephanie's death a homicide, it was salacious, but little else. After Stephanie Rabinowitz's death, her family wanted a quick burial in accordance with their religious customs. But it was Dr. Ian Hood who overruled that request in order to perform a full autopsy. And almost immediately, that decision paid big dividends. The first clue was the food found in Stephanie's stomach.
We know she had very recently ingested a meal, in this case shrimp and bean sprouts were quite clearly seen with very little digestion having occurred in the stomach contents. So she obviously died probably within an hour or two of ingesting that meal.
That meant Stephanie died around 10:30 p.m., but Craig didn't call 911 until after midnight. Dr. Hood also
Have that cash so that he could get out of debt, because clearly he could have divorced his wife and run off with the stripper if she'd had him. But I don't think that she'd had him if she found out that he was broke.
Craig had stretched his business scam as far as it could go. His investors wanted their money back and were putting pressure on him.
We had evidence in the case that indicated that they were expecting to get their money at the end of April. Well, the murder was in the last week in April.
And despite Craig's denials, his credit card receipts told investigators that he was visiting local hotels, possibly with Summer.
On some of those receipts, there was room service for 2 people, so we assumed that he was going there with her.
Prosecutors believe Craig set his plan in motion after they returned home from dinner in the Thai restaurant. Before going to bed, Craig spiked Stephanie's drink with his prescription sleep medication, more than enough to knock her out. He carried Stephanie upstairs, removed her clothes, and placed her in the bathtub to drown her. But the bathwater revived her. Her bruised elbows and knees showed Stephanie struggled, but she had no chance. The forensic evidence shows he gripped her around the neck and held her underwater. Frightened by what he had done, Craig waited 2 hours to call 911.
The gamble that Craig Rabinowitz engaged in was that we would not conduct an autopsy.
I think the autopsy decision was a very critical decision. I think because when it first came across, the outward appearances of it was that a horrible accident had taken place. There were sensitivities, I think, in trying to be sensitive to the family's wishes to bury Stephanie.
But on his first day in court, he had a change of heart. He said his wife appeared to him in a dream and convinced him to end the trial and confess to what he had done.
I think that's complete nonsense. I think he pled guilty for selfish reasons. He knew that we would spend several weeks just completely annihilating his character in front of the whole world, including his mother and friends and whatnot.
Craig Rabinowitz, if this proved anything, was a selfish, self-absorbed, weak person. And I think the prosecutor saw his plea not just as a heartfelt act of contrition to help the families, but as a self-serving, cowardly act that allowed him to avoid truly confronting and articulating in public the detail and the exact nature of what he had done.
Craig Rabinowitz was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I had no doubt that this would work out. Craig would be convicted. What this was doing to Stephanie's family had a much more immediate impact on me. And I think they really needed closure. They needed a full understanding of what had occurred. And to me, that's what the forensic evidence did.